So today I want to end on a rather unusual note, okay? And I want to talk about something called the dark night of the soul. Who? The dark night of the soul, okay? Now, even if you're not Christian, you might have come across this phrase before in popular culture, okay? And it's a phrase that goes really way back a long time in history. But it was so common in the Western world, this phrase being used, that actually people, right, we've come to apply it really broadly to cover anything, okay? Any difficulty in our life, any struggle that we're having, people will, tell their friend, you know what, I'm going through a dark night of soul, man. Right, okay? Fatigue, stress, struggle, crisis, okay? Don't know what to do with my life, don't know what to do after school. We just slap it on this. Okay? Now, nothing wrong with using it that way, but I do want to share with you what the dark night of the soul originally meant in the Christian faith, okay? And what it means for your faith as you grow in God, okay? So this phrase is a term that originated with Saint John of the Cross, okay? Who lived in the 1500s, okay? During something called the Counter-Reformation movement in Spain. Okay, so basically he was a Spanish Roman Catholic priest and a mystic, okay, and at the time, spirituality among Catholics was dying out in the 1500s, okay, and he was known as one of the 38 doctors of the church who wanted to bring people back to faith and spirituality. So he wrote his most famous work, and it was called The Dark Night of the Soul. Sometimes when I read this thing, right, it's like dyslexia. I don't know why this term, right? I was going, the dark soul of the night, the dark night of the soul. Okay, the dark night of the soul, okay? So in his writings, he describes this season of life as an out of the ordinary, extremely unusual period where God seeks to purify and purge our souls in a very profound way to prepare us for some new, completely different phase of our relationship with God. Okay? So you must understand, right? This phrase in its original meaning is not to be confused with just normal, expected challenges in our walk with God, like spiritual dryness, where maybe you're very tired. I know the youth team is very tired today. Let's see whether they can last through my message, okay? It's not as simple as I'm very distracted from quiet time, got a bit lazy with my habit of quiet time. Life is very distracting, so I'm not praying. It's not even something that John also wrote about called the dark night of the senses. Okay? And he talks about this in another book where he says sometimes we reach a point in our spiritual life where we no longer experience God and faith in the same way that we're used to. We pray, but we don't feel the same presence of God as strongly. We read the Bible, but the words don't jump out of the page for us like it once did. And with both these, right, the normal spiritual dryness and the dark night of the senses, okay, these things are not the same as what he's talking about when he talks about the dark night of the soul, where you simply need to push through. You simply need to wrestle for a breakthrough. You simply need to step out of the boat and walk on water. The dark night of soul is something completely different. You see, when John wrote this book, it was supposed to be chapter 4 of another book called Ascent to Mount Carmel. So those of you who have been longer in church, you know what Mount Carmel is about, right? Elijah, etc., etc. Okay, where he talks about the dark night of senses and what humans go through in the process of going from new Christian to more mature Christian and learning how to love God versus, just pray to Him about the things that you need in life. Okay, so all that he writes in 3 parts in this book called Ascent to Mount Carmel. Okay? So he writes these 3 parts, and then Dark Night of the Soul is supposed to be part 4, but then it becomes a book on its own, and because it becomes the most famous book, Christians begin to lump it all together. Dryness, difficulties, struggles in our walk with God, everything becomes Dark Night of the Soul. Okay, but that was not his original intention. Because when John writes about the dark night of the soul, he was talking about seasons in our life that one can only describe as maybe a major collapse of meaning, of purpose, doubts about your calling, sometimes even your personal identity. Sometimes this state of, season can lead to depression, major depression. Sometimes it can be triggered by external events that make you question, the goodness of God, for example. And for whatever reason leads you to feel like nothing in life really makes sense anymore. The feeling that there isn't a lot of purpose to anything. Sometimes I think the way the world is, it's pressuring us to feel this way. You start to think, what I have built up for my life, the why I have given myself, the activities that I do, the achievements I have, where I'm going, what I used to think were important, suddenly all of it I'm just questioning. And it starts to affect your relationship with God. It starts to put your life, your motivation, your feelings, your faith in a dark place. Okay? But here's the interesting thing, right? Instead of seeing it as a bad thing, as some sin that we need to repent of, John saw it as a natural purification process. That the old frameworks we have attached ourselves to needs to be collapsed so that God can transform. That the old life and the old us needs to be broken down in order to be put back together and awakened to new life and new faith moving forward. I know it sounds a little bit woo-woo, right? Okay, especially for high achievers like you guys sitting here, okay? But listen, I've personally gone through this season a couple of times in my life. Not often, but a couple of times. And when I look back and assess, they were all seasons when God was about to do something major and make a big change in my future. So for example, the first time, the shortest one I had was when I was in JC, which after it was over led me to suddenly rising up and becoming a leader in my church. It led to my decision after A-levels not to enroll in university and go full-time as a staff. But right before it happened, I actually walked away from following Jesus and backslided. So listen, this season led to me going from a backslider to a leader very, very quickly. Okay? The second time was just before I pioneered our church and started Change Our World. For nearly a year, I was in deep depression. I had left my old church because God had said so. I had not taken up 2 opportunities that came my way that were available to me, jobs in other churches, because I felt God saying it was not it for me. But I remember then after I said no, nothing came. And I remember being so stressed because when you're in your early 20s, right, everybody is starting to go out to work, they are making money, am I correct? And then, you are sitting at home doing nothing, well, not doing nothing, but, I remember not being able to sleep. I remember feeling so bad about myself. I remember feeling so lost and anxious, because I just couldn't see a way forward. I knew what God might be telling me to do, but there was no opportunity to make it happen. I couldn't plant a church. There was nobody giving me money to plant a church, And so, for 1 year, I was in deep depression. But then something began to change. And then that's when COW started. That's when church started. The third time was when I left for seminary. Okay? And I went through a process of completely deconstructing faith and the gospel and church and leadership. Now, I tend to call that season when I preach about it, I call it burnout because most people understand burnout as burnout, right? But really, I went through a period where it was sort of this deep undercurrent of crisis of faith when it came to the Bible and to church culture. Where every week I would get out and preach, and every week I would lead teams, and every week I would be leading people, and I could no longer feel like I could do it with integrity and blindly just keep teaching the same thing over and over and over again. Okay? And that led to, I think, years, the whole time in seminary, deconstructing, and coming back, and what happened? We became the evolution. Okay? So every time I've been through the dark soul of the night, sometimes, it looked like frustration, sometimes depression, sometimes burnout, but it was this thing called the dark soul of the night, where God was preparing me on the inside for something new. Now, it never felt like it at that point in time, especially right when you're stuck for not just 6 months, but 1 year and then a few years. But the result is always the same. It eventually led to something amazing and something new. Something that completely transformed my reality, that changed my frameworks and ways of understanding the world and imagining the future. And each time, here's the other interesting thing, each time there wasn't really much I could do actively, except write out the process. Take it one instruction from God at a time. But always, when I stuck it out, God would begin something new and amazing. Every time I would feel like there was no way out, that God was hidden from me, that somehow I was hidden from God, something will begin to change. So what I want to say to you is there are going to be moments in your life where God will feel like He's hidden from you. It doesn't have to be the dark soul of the night, or dark night of the soul. But in general. And it's not always because God is angry or absent. It just is. For example, when you first came to church, most of you here weren't looking for God. You weren't looking to become a Christian. God was hidden for you. You would come in and go, why are all these people slightly strange? Are you here with me? Why do I need God in my life? But then suddenly, God shows up and the conversation is settled. Sometimes it's the usual stuff in your quiet time is not working. And it just seems that time with God has lost its flavor. Right? And you feel like you're hidden from the presence of God. And God is hidden from you. And you can't break through no matter how much you pray in tongues, no matter how many hours you try to do it, no matter how long you read the Bible. It's like day after day, something is veiled to you. You see, there will be seasons where it's like that. You see, here's a psalm in Psalm 30, right? That's very, very baffling, right? It says there, Psalm 30, verse 6 to 12, when I was comfortable, I said I would never stumble. Because it pleased you, Lord, you made me a strong mountain. Sounds good, right, so far? But then you hid your presence, and I was terrified. I cried out to you, Lord. I begged the Lord for mercy. What is to be gained by my spilled blood, by my going down into the pit? Does dust thank you? Does it proclaim your faithfulness? Lord, listen and have mercy on me. Lord, be my helper. And then it says, I didn't realize y'all were singing this today. Okay, you're saying this, right? You changed my mourning into dancing. Something like that? What's the thing that you're doing just now? Oh, to my sin. Okay, different. Slightly different. Okay, so you changed my mourning into dancing. You took off my funeral clothes and dressed me up in joy, so that my whole being might sing praises to you and never stop. Lord, I will give thanks to you forever. It's very interesting, right? Everything was good. Suddenly God was hidden. Your life plunged into darkness, into the pit, into the dust. And then suddenly God turns your mourning into dancing. And I will give thanks to you. My whole being will give thanks to you and praise you forever. You see, God is sometimes a God who hides himself from human beings. But it's not that he's abandoned humanity. It's not always because what you're doing is not enough. Okay? But God is putting you through a process of purification to create a new you. A new you that will commune with him in a fresh, new way that's no longer comfortable. That is no longer how strong you are in prayer, okay, but that something changes in your whole being to start to praise God. Okay, so I will say today's message will feel like it's more suitable to leaders in church, okay? But if you listen very carefully, the same process is going to apply to many of you right now, this year, okay? Those of you who are just starting on your walk with Jesus and you want to experience the presence of God and not just follow a religion, not just practice Christianity when and as you feel that, but you meet God himself and have a supernatural encounter that changes your life. This is going to apply to those of you who are going through transitions in life, trying to figure out what is next for me. Maybe you just finished army, maybe you just finished uni and you're going, what's next? Maybe you're stuck at work for a very long time and you finally reach that point where I think I need to make a change. This applies to you. Okay? And those of you who it's time to recognize that it is the dark night of the soul for you, then listen, this message today is really going to help you because it's going to help you move through to the other side, to that big breakthrough that God has in mind for you. Okay? Because waiting on the other side of your dark night is a deeper why. Waiting on the other side is bigger encounters with Jesus, miracles and breakthroughs. Waiting on the other side is joy and strength. You see, sometimes faith requires us to wrestle. Sometimes faith requires us to pursue the impossible. But once in a while, faith requires us to wait. And today I want to tell you what is happening when God tells you to wait, so that you know how to respond and get through to the other side. Okay? So the first thing you will notice most of the time when you go through the darks of the night, the first thing you will experience is what Richard Rohr likes to call necessary failing. Okay? It's going to borrow from him today because it sounds so nice. Necessary failing. Okay? And the thing you need to do when you are experiencing necessary failing is you need to humble yourself. Okay? Psalms 36:12 says, when I was comfortable, I said, I will never stumble. I will never walk away from God. I will never leave you, Jesus, right? Because it pleased you, Lord, I walked with you for 10 years since I was 14 years old, and you made me a strong mountain as a leader. But then suddenly, you hear your presence. Okay? You know, we all like to think when we've been a Christian for long enough that we have our spiritual life in check. And it could be very well the case. We like to think as young people who are very educated, got a lot of exposure to I don't know how to set goals and blah, 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 that we have our life in order. We know what we are doing, right? But the fact of the matter is, right, our ego is something, right, that needs to be kept in check in order to keep growing as a human being. You know, and I want to bring this to your mind right now, right? Ego isn't just being arrogant. Ego isn't just that proud guy in school that you can't stand. Ego isn't that person that can't stop talking about themselves and thinks the world of themselves. No, every single human being, we have an ego. And our ego is a living thing. It is always growing. And sometimes it's not a bad thing. You know, it grows as you grow in age and experience. It grows as you progress in rank and title, and it should. As your confidence grows, some of you here that used to struggle with low self-esteem, your ego will also grow alongside it. Right? When a plant is doing well, the rest of the plants around it also start to do well. Ego is like that. Right? It feeds off everything, and it also grows alongside the good stuff in your life. So we will start to become comfortable with what used to be a challenge. We will start to feel more self-assured, and we won't stumble on, right? We don't need mentoring as much, don't need coaching as much, don't need somebody to discipline us as much, correct? And it's true, you should become more independent the more you grow up, right? Your parents shouldn't need to baby you all the time, right? So there's a good part about that, but the bad part also grows alongside it, which is I'm comfortable, I'm a strong mountain, I will never stumble. Okay? In fact, sometimes it's God who made you the strong mountain. Am I right? But then the next thing the psalmist says when we reach that point, it says, God hid his presence. Now, the psalmist never tells us exactly what happened in his life, but what he writes about next is this. After that, he began to cry out to God, beg God for mercy. You know, something must have happened because very specific, right? What is to be gained by my spilled blood? Okay, what is to be gained by going down the pit, by me going to hell? Dying. Okay, does the dust thank you? Does it proclaim your faithfulness? You know, God, if you destroy me, who is going to proclaim your faithfulness? Who is going to praise you in the temple? You know, who is going to make the name of Jesus known? Right? You know, who is going to be, I'm a good human being, God. You know, you'll be taking one good human being off the map. Yeah? Okay? Right? Lord, listen, have mercy. Lord, be my helper. Whatever happened, it pushed the psalmist from a place of comfort to desperation. It forced him to humble himself and cry out to God. Now, I'm of the conviction, firm believer, that in order to be a good leader in life, you have to be good at failing. in order to be a great follower of Jesus, you need to be really good at failing a lot. Okay? Never mind if your dream is not to follow Jesus, then in order to be great at whatever you do in life, you have to be really great at failing. You know, I'm always struck by reading the Bible how our greatest heroes were sometimes the greatest failures. You know, Abraham was a failure when it came to protecting his wife and his children. Jacob was a failure when it came to manipulating to get what he wants. He was so ambitious, right? They couldn't help step over people to get what he wants. You know, David was known as the greatest worshiper, but he also made the worst purity mistakes in life. He killed a man to cover up his adultery. You know, many of the greatest prophets were also the most depressed and most emo people you ever read about in the Bible. Right? Peter, the leader of the apostles, was also the only one who not only ran, but also denied Jesus. But the thing that all of these people had in common was their ability to own their failures and repent and move from ego to soul. To humble themselves and let God transform their attitudes and their character so that they could be more. You see, there is no greatness in your faith in God or your faith in life without humility. You know, we talk a lot about becoming better human beings in the evolution. We talk a lot about becoming your best self. But if we're not careful, your version of your best self will be no better than any prosperity gospel or social media tagline. Your positive self-talk will be nothing but superficial bravado in life. Because there's no true faith and confidence without deep humility. The breaking down of our ego every other season of our life so that there's room for transformation, for learning, and for growth. So over and over, the Bible tells us, right, humility attracts God. If you don't believe in God, never mind. Humility attracts opportunity. Humility attracts the best mentors. Humility attracts the most opportunities. Humility attracts learning. Humility attracts greatness. Okay? So it says here, right, 1 Peter, and this is Peter writing, right? So in the same way, I urge you who are younger, accept the authority of your elders. And everyone, clothe yourself in humility toward each other. God stands against the proud, but he gives favor to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under God's power so that he may raise you up. You know, I was watching an episode of Oprah, right, this week or the last week, I can't remember which, and they were talking about this new phenomenon that's happening in the world among millennials, especially Gen Z, okay? Mostly Gen Z, okay, of people in our generations, youth and young adults, cutting themselves off from their families for increasingly smaller reasons. I won't say trivial, but smaller reasons. Okay? Now, a lot of times it could be valid, repeated transgressions, but sometimes over very small, over very scary little things. Now listen, I'm all for boundaries. Right? I teach it to you in church. But I think for a long time, and really for a long time, people in authority had too much power, and we needed to balance the scales a little bit to be healthier, right? But I will say this too, right? If we don't learn how to have a healthy humility in life, adaptability to other people, a deference to good authority figures in our life, then listen, humanity will start to have a very lonely and disconnected and trivial experience of life. We will get disconnected from each other because everyone is going, it's my way or the highway, I'm always right, and my boundaries are always right, and we cannot adapt. You know, we will become disconnected with God because we'll only agree with God, we'll only follow God if God tells us what we want to hear. That you are so great, you are so awesome, you can do nothing wrong. You know, there's no values, you need the other, anybody's values is correct. Are you here? You see, the thing that people don't realize is there is a place for authority in every human being's life. Because authority really is our first encounter in life when it comes to learning, obedience, discipline, teachability, values, right? Being in relationship with our parents and teachers and hopefully the good experiences, right? Right? Teaching us to not always have our own way is healthy. It teaches us how to be in relationship with other people. But when we start to think that we are always right, we should be the arbiter of what is right and wrong. When young adults feel, we're the only one who's right at work. When you feel that my feelings are always very valid and important, but they don't think about their teachers' feelings or their parents' feelings, then listen, what happens? We are not capable of deeper connection with each other. Okay? So you got to understand, right? This process of learning to fail, learning to defer to authority, learning to sit in discomfort and to move through discomfort and find different ways around discomfort are important. They are essential for us to do great things in life. Okay? But I find nowadays, right, it's as though we've started to run from the necessity of failure. All the young people here, I want to say this to you, right? You need to learn to embrace the necessity of failure. You need to learn to embrace that you will fail and there will be consequences. You need to embrace that failure will invite hard knocks, scoldings, right? Owning your mistakes instead of running from it. That they are necessary so that God and other people can speak into your life to bring about humility. You need to embrace this part of life or you will never truly progress towards the future that you dream of. I love what John says, right, in his writings. He says, if something does not give birth to humility and love and dying to self and godly simplicity and sometimes silence, what can it be? How great can it be? How awesome can it be? Right? If your life is always successful, how great can it be? If your faith in Jesus is always, you are amazing, you are awesome, and nothing you do is bad, how good can that faith be? Right? But also, I want to say to all the leaders here, right, the more you rise as a leader, the more you need to actually train yourself to keep being, open to the necessity of failure. That it will increase, not get less. Okay? For a long time, the past few years, I always hear this study, right? Because I would struggle with it in my life as well. I got more confident as a leader. Then suddenly, the more I rose in leadership, I began to have more imposter syndrome. It's a very strange thing. And so, recent years, right, they found that actually this is true. The higher leaders climb, there's actually more imposter syndrome they face. Strange, right? Shouldn't it be the reverse, correct? And so I started thinking about it and kept thinking, okay, but nobody's writing about how to get rid of it. They're just writing, we have it. But everybody has it, we don't know what to do with it, right? And so for years, I think this is something to get rid of. This is something I need to purge from my life. This is something I need to settle once and for all, right? But recently, I started to think, maybe I just need to let it be. Maybe it's a matter of getting used to the necessity of failure, that the more I want to succeed, the more I need to fail. Okay? That the more I want to grow, the more I need to invite discipline and difficulty. And when that happens, don't give up, don't check out. Instead, wait. Cry out to God for help. Ask God to extend mercy and help you to transform. Ask people to extend their help and give you a hand. Okay? Because the next thing God has in store for you requires that humility of you. You got to give up your comfort. You got to give up the hope, the illusion of never struggling and never stumbling. You got to give up the stuff that God put in you that made you a strong mountain and let it go. Because there's something else that God has that is better. Okay? So understand this, failure is necessary. In that season, don't struggle against it. Instead, accept it and humble yourself under God. Now, the second experience you will have in the dark night of the soul is negative emotions. Negative emotions. And when you find those emotions, listen, you need to learn how to be still. Friend, listen, you can't get away from negative emotions. At some point, you know what? waiting on God will require you to sit in those negative emotions. Now, listen, negative emotions, right, actually looks different for different ones of us. Some of us here, your way of dealing with it is to run from it and avoid it and don't think too much about it. But some of us think all the time about it. Some of us, will avoid it by going to throw ourselves in work. Some of us will throw ourselves into fun. Everything to avoid sitting in the difficulty and the confronting, horrible feeling of negative emotions. Now, I will concede, right? Sometimes we all need a break from ourselves and from our thoughts, right? If we're too tired, we need to go and sleep so that our mind can calm down and then we can pray more rationally. Right? We need to sometimes rest in order to run and sort out our feelings. But the thing I find that differentiates healthy leaders from unhealthy ones is great leaders know how to, that they know at the end of the day, negative emotions are just part of the process. You start to realize after many years of being on this earth and being a leader and doing stuff at work, you realize that you can go on holiday, but the problem will still be there when you get back to work. Right? You can even, or do the reverse, be a workaholic and throw yourself into work, and more work, but the problem will still be there once you're done with that work. The feelings will still be there. The feelings about yourself and what you're struggling with will still be there. Right? There's no running away from pain. The only way sometimes is through. So, Richard Rohr likes to say it this way, right? There must be solidarity with suffering if you are ever to experience resurrection. Right? The Bible says, right, in John 12, the seed must die in order for there to be a harvest. So understand this, right? Dying is not a one-time event. It is not a one-time commitment. Dying in the Christian faith is a spiritual discipline. It is a disciple's discipline. Yes, I know, Jesus was humiliated so that we could be lifted up. Jesus took our sins so that we didn't have to pay the price ourselves. Jesus exchanged our disease for healing, our bondage for freedom. Awesome, great, right? But that is beginner-believer relationship with God. That is what you get out of God. But the next step is, who of you can be more like God? If you're a leader, and taking up your cross is not part of your life and practice of following Jesus, you're not living in the fullness of who God is. You're not living in the fullness of who God wants to turn you into for the future. But, never mind being great, okay, but just general growth itself, right? When has there ever been any growth in a human being's life that has not involved some kind of pruning, some kind of dying to self, some kind of letting go of old habits and old life and old ways and old patterns in order to move forward? Okay? So, listen, if you are someone moving through life and your goal is only positive vibes, fun, great, then you'll always be ordinary. That big dream you have, it won't happen. Because negative emotions is part of the process. They are part of change. They are part of growth. So what do we do then, right? Well, John has an interesting thing in his book. And he said, this is not the time to speak with God, but the time to put one's mouth in the dust. We must suffer through this purgation with patience and learn to be still. Okay? So I'm going to say something really radical, which sounds really contrary to what I've taught you over many, many years. Okay, ready for this? Not every negative emotion can be solved with therapy. Or with talking to ChatGPT. Actually, I've been reading the studies that have been come off people who use ChatGPT for therapy, and it's not good. In fact, it's really bad. Okay? Because ChatGPT is not wisdom, it's replication. It's an echo chamber reflected back to you. Okay? ChatGPT is not a human. It cannot release oxytocin in your brain, which is what you need to feel truly happy in life. It can give you a shot of dopamine, a fake version of oxytocin, but that's more or less it. Okay, look, you know me. Okay, I believe in therapy. Very, very much so. But I also believe, or rather, what I believe in is effective therapy. And I also believe that therapy cannot be a replacement for having friends and knowing how to connect with people, learning how to get along with people, learning how to be in person with people. Okay? So, listen, some negative emotions in our life, right? Some of it can be solved, but a large part of it really is just part of human existence. And we have to learn to cultivate a discipline of stillness. Okay, so Psalm 46 verse 10, right? It says there, be still and know that I am God. Okay, now this word in the Hebrew text, right? It actually means more accurately, stop struggling and know that I am God. CB, I like the straightforward version. CB says, that's enough. Sometimes I wish God would say that to me more often, when I'm overthinking, that's enough. Okay? So there comes a point, right, in our struggle and our remuneration over and over again, right, with negative emotions, that we have to decide, right, to align with God and say, that's enough. Okay? Now again, it looks different in these different seasons of life. For example, one season I had to decide to stop emoing. In another season, I had to decide to be brave and step into therapy. In some other seasons, I had to go, okay, enough is enough. It's just time to stop. Just go do something. Rather than sit here and make yourself upset. Are you following? So, I think, right, there's this problem right now in humanity. We seem to be in this season as a world where suddenly being emo is hailed as being self-aware. Not exactly wrong, but not exactly right either. We seem to be a season where avoiding negative emotions by having lots of fun and lots of money and dressing up and all this stuff, right, is a way to show people, see, we're fine. Or, we're also in a season in leadership where it's like, leadership is being thoughtful for your people constantly, right? Are you following? Again, nothing wrong with any of those things in itself. But the question is, all that aside, are you good at being still when you need to be? Are you good at being still in the ways you need to be so that you can be who God made you to be? Are you okay with solitude? Are you okay with silence? Are you okay with not needing to be constantly stimulated every single day? Are you okay if God doesn't immediately remedy your negative situation or emotions? Are you okay with not pleasing everybody? Can you still sit with God even if God chooses to say nothing to you during quiet time? It's very funny, I think it's sort of like life always swings in extremes, right? But you see, every extreme has a lesson. We used to come from a very authoritarian generation. Don't feel it, also just praise God. And, people start to say, oh, that's traumatic, that was abuse, right? True, half of it true. But the other truth is also it was discipline. It was resilience. It was training our mind and our soul to be still, even when it didn't feel like it. to praise and to smile even when we didn't feel like it. Okay? Now we carried it too far, so some of us went into therapy. But I'm still so thankful for that because when I need to, I can turn on the stillness. When I need to, I have a recollection of what it means to be resilient. Right? Then we swing to the other extreme. Right? Self-care, 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 self-care. Ding, 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 ding. Are you here? You know, do stuff that are fun, be free. And I go, and then? Do you feel still? Do you feel happy? Do you feel satisfied? Have you solved the problem of you feel lonely? Have you solved the problem of you feel purpose and meaning in life? You know, did the shoes do it for you? Okay, we need to learn to sit with stuff. Okay? So, all the new Christians here, right? You know, the next step of your relationship with God should be experiencing miracles. Hearing God encourage you, believe in you, tell you His dreams for your life. Because that word is going to change you. It's going to make you hopeful, excited, feel like you've got direction to move in. That's how the first step of your faith is supposed to feel like and supposed to grow. But I promise you too, that very quickly, you will also feel like sometimes God will stop doing as many miracles and give you as many feelings. Because that's when you start to learn to love Jesus for Jesus and not just what He can do for you. And that's when you start to want to be like Jesus, not just get a miracle. Okay? Now, for those of you who have gotten past that point, you're kind of midlife as a Christian, right? But listen, that's when God will also hide from you. To move your love for Jesus from infatuation to commitment and to covenant. You see, love for Jesus as infatuation needs to be constantly stimulated to be maintained. You have to constantly experience miracles, constantly get hyped up sermons, constantly see breakthroughs with your goals, constantly emotional altar calls. You must see visions and dreams in order to sustain infatuation with Jesus. You know, God is not always easy to love. You know, your friend always easy to love. Your spouse always easy to love. No, right? Okay? The real question isn't whether you can be infatuated. The real question is, can you be committed even when the infatuation is not there? Will you still practice great attitude and character when God isn't constantly cheering you on? Are you still going to be the same committed person even when there's no title or recognition? Okay? And for those of us who have moved even past that point, you are committed, you are dedicated, you are in covenant with Jesus, you will never walk away from Him, then listen, if you're struggling right now, you are in the time of the dark soul of the night, where it's not the same lessons, it's transformation. God is breaking down your reality in order to create a new reality. Wait. Be still. Now listen, you can still do stuff, plan stuff, but on the inside, find your quiet secret place and be still. Be in that place where it's okay that you don't know what to talk to God about, but you still trust God. It's okay to trust and yet not feel the trust. You know, be still and say, God, I'm here, speak to me, I humble myself, I will be patient, but it's okay if there's no answer. I will still follow Jesus. You see, for John of the Cross, ultimately the dark night of the soul is a process of purification whose ultimate goal is union with God. Where the outcome is not about a breakthrough. The goal is not an answered prayer, but a deeper union with God. That's not attached to outcomes. And he goes so far as to say this, the dark night isn't something we do, but that God does to us. And it's the only version of faith that involves passive spirituality. Our job is to just welcome God's work with trust and love. To say, it's okay that I'm failing and feel like a failure. I humble myself and say that's okay. It's okay that my mind is swirling with negative emotions and I no longer feel the confidence I once did. I will not doubt. I will not be angry. I will not lash out at God. God will wait on you. You see, this is what Isaiah 40 verse 31 is talking about when it says, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. CB says hope. Some other versions say trust. It's very funny, there's a certain word in the Bible. There are many words for faith, many words, Greek words for confidence, but there's one particular one. I cannot remember how it's said out loud, a little bit complicated, but it simultaneously means assurance in yourself and trust in God at the same time. There's something deeper than just, I believe. Are you here with me? Yes. You see, there are very, very few instances in the Bible where we are told to wait when it comes to faith. Very few stories to explain what that looks like in life when it comes to waiting. But it does happen. And if you are going through something like that in your life, this is one of those times, wait on God. Don't run. Don't hide. Don't replace it with other stuff. Don't struggle and struggle and struggle. Don't even wrestle. Just wait. You see, Isaiah is one of those prophets where I feel he really had a grasp on this. Because he talks about this the most, I think, of all the prophets. He says, I will wait on the Lord, who is hiding his face from the descendants of Jacob. I will put my trust in him. Now, of course, summary in poetry is easy. But in real life, actual execution very hard, right? You and I here don't have the luxury of not going to work and just sitting and waiting. Right? We don't have the luxury of not showing up to exams because we don't feel like it. And we're too anxious, right? I, as the leader of this church, don't have the luxury of sitting and doing nothing to grow the church. And just say, it's okay, guys, we'll just wait on God for 1 year in 2026. People will show up. People will show up. But here's the thing, right? Every dark night of the soul I've been through, I still had to sit for my A-levels. Still have to get out and go to work. Still have to get out and preach, study and submit papers in Bible school and still lead the church. And try to believe in what I'm doing with the old frameworks. I still had to move something. But I also sometimes had to learn to wait and resist the urge to move everything. So when I would go through seasons like that, when I at some point recognize that this is what is happening, where I would just do my best to make space and time and energy for God to purify me, to just sit in his presence and be. And not try to move him, not trying to speak. Are you with me? Not try to do everything, right? But to just be and cultivate my union with God. So I want to say this to all of you here, right? Because we'll go straight into Christmas after this. And then we're just going to have to chong through Christmas and then into 2026 we go. Now, over the last few weeks, God has put some dreams in your heart. Some of you big ones, some of you small ones. I want you to take time the next few weeks before 2026 comes knocking, right? Take time to cultivate your relationship with God. Because you can't fulfill a spiritual dream feeding it with non-spiritual things. One of your goals, all the youth here this December, should be to do more quiet time and experience as much of God's presence as you can while you're having holidays. One of the goals you should set for yourself for 2026 is a discipline of prayer and reading the Bible. It should be one of your most important commitments. Because this is a time in your life you need to grow your faith. You need to learn how to love Jesus. Yeah. Now, for the leaders here, listen, sometimes it's lots of movement that is what is comfortable to you. It feels good to do what you've already learned how to do and are good at. Because no one likes feeling incompetent. No one likes to go back to the anxiety of our youth, of being inexperienced, and not having a lot of skills and wisdom, right? But sometimes we're too comfortable with a lot of movement and a lot of wisdom. And we need to let God put us in a place of anxiety again, discomfort again, in order to learn humility again and to grow again. So I'm going to make it very simple for you, right? If you are not feeling humble, if you are not failing that much in church, or feeling like you're failing in life, there's a part of me that wonders whether you stop growing as a leader. Okay? Now, conversely, with some of you, you're feeling too humble. Okay, congratulations, it's okay. Okay, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it, it's just part of the process. Every great leader, the higher we climb, the more imposter syndrome we feel. In fact, that's probably what makes us good leaders. That's probably what makes us excel. It's what makes us think a bit more about how we lead people and whether we do it well. Because we don't feel 100% worthy. Okay, but hopefully there are seasons we come to a place where the confidence is just right. Confidence in ourselves and confidence in God. Okay? But if that's how you're feeling, very humble, just accept it. Sit with it. Leave it be. Okay? And if you're someone today, right, you feel like you're constantly a slave to negative emotions. Youth who are too emo. Okay? People who are feeling too tired, too numb, don't want to think or thinking too much. Then listen, learn to be still. I don't know what stillness looks like for you, but in different seasons it's different, but find your stillness in God. You know, for some people, right, walking on water happens in the middle of a raging storm. The winds are blowing, they can't get to shore, they're about to sink. You know, that was what it was like for Peter and the disciples. But you know, some people, right, their storm is being stranded out at sea where there's no wind, no movement. You paddle, so the boat don't move. Are you here? Learn to accept that is what it is. That is a negative feeling of feeling nothing, right? But then find that stillness. A stillness that brings you to God. A stillness that brings you to your best self, of knowing yourself better, okay? Of having a confidence that it's going to be okay and you will get where you are going. Okay? So, and finally, listen, what is the goal of faith? You know, faith can have a lot of goals. You know, in some seasons, the goal of faith is success at school. God told you you're going to get an A, and you go for that A. God told you you're going to get a promotion at work, you go for that promotion. God told you you're going to increase your income, you increase your income. Okay? God told you we're going to grow this church, and it will grow and it will hit. Sometimes faith has a goal. Okay? But what is the goal of faith ultimately? Especially when it comes to the dark night of the soul, or really just anything with your faith. The goal is for you to know Jesus. For you to be one with God. For you to have a faith and trust in life that is not easily shaken or broken. To have a covenant with God that is not easy for you to divorce yourself from. So, you might feel like, wow, the world is coming apart. You may feel like I made a lot of steps to try and get myself out of the rut this past couple of years. Good for you. Okay? But right now you still feel the things that I used to believe in, I don't feel passionate about. The things that used to motivate me no longer motivate me. The things that used to be my reality right now feels foreign and alien to me. I feel numb. God is hidden. Listen, you're exactly where you need to be. But how you respond will determine who you become. Whether you walk away from God and your life goes back to the way it was. whether you repeat your life with more of the same the next 5 years, or God changes you and you discover something more and exciting and meaningful and purposeful for your future. Wait, because God is doing something. See, most people don't survive the waiting. It's very funny, right? Jesus resurrected from the dead. It was a great miracle. There were 500 disciples who were gathered in the upper room, and then after 40 days, only 120 were left. Because the rest couldn't wait. Because they couldn't wait. They couldn't experience a new era of God. Pentecost, the falling of the Holy Spirit. Okay? Wait. Because I promise you, God is doing something. I don't know what it is. You know, some of these seasons, some lasted 6 months, some lasted 1 year, some lasted 3. But the thing I always knew how to do well was to bring myself to a place where I could accept the season and just wait. And waiting on God set me on a path to building this church. Waiting on God set me on a path to transforming the gospel and Christianity that I was teaching. And now, guess what? I'm waiting again. Have been waiting since COVID broke. Right? And we had to move out a new place and come into a new home. I don't know everything about what is going on, but I'm learning to trust God even more. You know, I'm learning to let my confidence rest in God and let Him do something in my life that I'm not striving for, something that I cannot see or feel. That what He promises will be far beyond what I have capacity to understand right now. And I believe God is doing something in you as well if you are going through that.